Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LocoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin and Karina, owner of Team LocoFit. Each week, I am joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com. All right, and we are back, and this week I'm joined with Coach Karina.
Hey guys!
And we're going to do as always, we're doing 2 podcasts this week, but they are very distinct, but I think they go together as far as...
They're sequential.
Yeah, they are. So listen to this one first, and then the next one. And it really is that time of year that a lot of people are finishing, whether it's their reverse diet or their maintenance phase, or just kind of getting consistent. The holidays are around the corner.
It's just super convenient to not be dieting right now.
Yes.
So most people, unless obviously like you're competing in January, are not dieting right now.
Most people are not in a calorie deficit right now. I do have some clients starting who, don't really have like huge holiday plans. They're like, oh, I have a meal or two. So it's like, all right, well, we're going to get a leg up and get going. But most people are going to be finishing out a reverse diet or a maintenance phase or a surplus, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. So
the first podcast, we're going to cover that. And then the second one is going to be, getting ready to start a diet. So they, like we said, they are sequential.
Yep.
So definitely listen to this one first. So the first question, how do you know that you're ready to end this period? You're done with your reverse, you're done adding calories. And we work with people with a wide variety of goals. So some people are, they're just learning how to maybe track macros, and they're just learning how to be consistent with their meals. And then other people are, well-oiled machines, like we've gotten their food up really high, and that's part of, the competitive athlete aspect of it. Right. So everybody's gonna be a little bit different here, but how do you know that you're kind of ready to finish this period?
Yeah, so this is a question I feel like we both get all the time, even at the beginning of a reverse diet, it's like, okay, how long do I have to reverse diet?
1 weekend. Hey!
No. So there's definitely a few different aspects that we have to look into, not just physically, but obviously physically, one of them being, obviously where you are physically is really important, but then we also have to look at the mental aspect of things. Mm-hmm. So how you know you're ready to start or end your reverse diet, start a fat loss phase is, asking yourself, did you spend enough time away from dieting? And, that's something that's like a serious question that a lot of people have to ask, especially if you love competing. Some people just love competing and it's really hard for them to stay away from the stage. But if you don't take enough time away, you're really not going to make the changes that you need to make if you're constantly dieting. Mm-hmm. So I think a super important question to ask yourself, if you're considering ending a reverse diet is, did I spend enough time away? And I think a question that I get a lot is, how much time do I need to be spending reverse dieting? And obviously
literally the $1 million question.
Yeah. So I think that varies person to person, but what do you think about, is there a specific formula, set time?
Yeah, so it's really going to depend on the person, what the person is doing before. Mm-hmm. And it's also going to depend on the person's goals. Right. So we'll do the competing example first. So if the only time that a short off season really works is when somebody's physique is at a place that really we're pretty happy with. They're not really in a position where they need to make a lot of changes, right?
They can maintain comfortably.
Mm-hmm. A little bit, they're maintaining a little bit leaner. They only really have to drop a little bit. And they're not really hey, the judges weren't you need to completely change what your physique looks like, right? Yeah. So I have some clients who will fit into that category. So it's all right, we're going to be okay with a shorter period. But for most people who are interested in physique competitions, their physique needs time off, in order to grow. They, metabolically, hormonally, mentally, all of that is going to take some time. So a good rule of thumb for most people is however long you spent dieting, you want to spend at least that amount of time not in a deficit. So if your prep was 6 months, you likely want to wait at least 6 months. Now, are some people recovered before that? Yes. Are some people double that time? Yeah. Also, yes.
And I think it just depends on how aggressive you had to get.
Yes.
And just how much time.
How aggressive the adaptations were too.
Right. Yeah, and how long it took for you to recover. You also don't want to start a reverse diet when you're just being recovered. You want to spend a good amount of time in like already being recovered. If say for example you're a female, you lost your period while you were dieting, you don't want to start a diet like the first month you get that back. You want to kind of spend some time in a place where your body where your body is comfortable. So other than that,
and then for Gen Pop, it's going to be a little bit different. So we typically will have people who come to us in kind of two categories. One, either they're just very new to all of this, so they maybe haven't tracked macros before, or really not even just macros, but in general haven't put a ton of effort into their meal timing or their meal planning. They're just really learning about how to be consistent. So for that person, before we're even thinking about a diet, we need to nail all of that down first, right?
Yeah.
So we're not even like, it's not really a timeline thing. It's like, some people picked it up really quickly. Other people really struggle with that. So it's going to depend on that person and kind of like how they're responding here. But if you don't even have kind of basic habits and consistency and routine down, starting a deficit is a really, really poor idea, because what most people do without realizing it is that they undereat and then they overeat, and it kind of fluctuates. And that's really unconducive for optimal body composition. Especially when you're already in a body comp that maybe isn't favorable. If you're in a position that's pretty good, you can get away with a little bit more. But when you're in a place where you're not, it's harder.
You have to be really on top of it.
Now, the one thing that is important though, as far as like, how long, right? And this is kind of where we always go in between like optimal versus what actually matters for coaching. So what actually matters for coaching is, is the person, physically healthy, right? Like, do they actually need to diet? Like, that's a real thing too that we need to consider. If somebody is in an unhealthy position, now I'm not saying that if they don't have their shit together, they can start a diet. No, but I'm saying that it might be a shorter time window where, on the extreme end for bodybuilding, we're like, at least 6 months till you're recovered. For somebody else who maybe like does need to lose weight, I'm not going to say that like, hey, we need to build your calories up for 6 months. No. That's probably not going to be ideal for you either. That might actually be, disadvantageous for you. So it's just really going to depend on kind of like the health status of the person.
If you even need to consider like diet.
Metabolically, hormonally, kind of all of that. And then also, where is their consistency? Like, where are their habits? So it's hard to say, as always, like a time. But like you said, if somebody was already actively dieting, whether they were, general population or they were some kind of competitive athlete, that is one of the biggest distinguishers. Okay, when was the last time you dieted? If you just dieted and you finished a diet in October and now you're like ready to go, for a very small amount of people is that going to be possibility. It is possible for some people, but it's not the ideal way that we would handle that for most clients. And obviously, like, I think the big factor for that question would be like, where are you metabolically adapted? Because if your body is adapted to you barely eating and doing tons of cardio, and you take like 2 weeks off, sorry to tell you that your next dieting attempt is your next dieting attempt is literally not going to work, and you're just going to be spinning your wheels. So what happens? What might happen when you start a diet too soon? So say you haven't spent the right time, right amount of time off, what might happen if you start dieting too soon? Like, what are some of those signs?
So essentially kind of what I just mentioned, your body is already going to be adapted to a lower intake. If you haven't taken enough time to eat more, your metabolism isn't going to be adapted to running on higher calories. So what essentially might happen is you try to cut your calories, it's not going to be enough of a deficit for your body to actually lose weight. So what a lot of people end up doing and have to do is they have to cut their calories even lower than the last time they diet, or even lower and lower and lower, because they never give themselves that break to adapt to a higher amount of calories. And you eventually kind of run into a point where it's like, well, no matter what I do, like, it's not working. I can't reduce my calories low enough where I actually feel okay to do it as well, and I can't lose weight. And that's where you have those people who are like, I've been dieting my whole life and I can't lose weight. Well, because you've never taken time away to allow your body to actually be desensitized from dieting. If that makes sense.
And generally what happens when you're in that kind of position is that you're going through these periods of dieting where now you have these adaptations, and then you go up for a day or two a week, right? You're not consistently, if you ate 800 calories a day for 2 years straight, I promise you would be at a lower body weight, right? But what happens is, maybe you're doing that most days, but then the days that you're not doing that, they're 3,000.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have all these other mental side effects that come from it. And then when your body is in a position to where it is down-regulated or up-regulated for certain hormones, depending on what we're talking about, you're going to store things easier. So when you do have those, well, why can't I just go and have a meal? It's like, well, because of all these things, you know what I mean? It's not just one meal. Like, yes, it is. But when you consistently have these like transgressions from the diet that are really, really high and you've already been really, really low for a while, your body is going to stick to that a lot harder.
Yeah.
So that's really where that issue comes from.
Yeah, and so I've had certain clients, and there are certain people who are like, you know, if I have one meal and I gain weight, that weight sticks. Whereas like for the average person, you might see a fluctuation and that comes back down.
Yeah.
And those are often the people who just spend so much time like chronically dieting. And I understand how hard it is to intentionally eat more, especially if you're like mentally, you're just not comfortable in your own body. But sometimes you really need to go through that like sacrifice and like I need to be uncomfortable for a little bit, but like trust me, it'll pay off in the long run for you to be able to like have a normal meal and not worry about gaining 5 pounds.
Yeah, because what most people don't realize, and this is where it gets a little bit funny with, you know, you think, okay, numbers and calories and all this stuff, it should be very clear cut, but it's really not, right? So say, you know, a lot of people will think, oh, well, I'm kind of pushing it a little bit, but I just want to drop a little bit, like maybe like 100, 200 calories. It's like, sorry, you're not going to lose any weight doing that. Your body is just going to easily adapt to that lower number, but it's not really going to see many changes. Now, if you have a super sensitive body, maybe, but most people are not going to be in that position. So that's where it's like, no, sometimes we have to go through these periods of, we're pushing a little bit to be uncomfortable. And especially if you're somebody who's a high-level athlete, particularly a physique athlete, you're going to have to push really hard on the prep side, which everybody kind of knows. But if you're trying to gain even an extra half pound of muscle, you know, you might need to push hard on the other end. And that's just the reality of doing this. If you don't want to do that, then just don't compete. So you have to understand that. No, like, there's literally nothing wrong with that.
I don't compete anymore.
But don't like use that as the, oh, well, I just don't want to. It's like, no, if you're going to go that low over here, you got to go this high over here.
And it, like you said, it depends on the goal. And if your goal is to look a certain way on stage, then you have to take those necessary steps in the off season. And there are those athletes who like live and die for the stage, and they will do that. And you know, good for them. But just because someone else does that doesn't mean like you need to too. But like you said, it's very dependent on the person and their goals, on how long you need to reverse, and you know when it's time to step out of that.
So another thing too to consider at the end of this period is that training should be really good. You know, performance in the gym should be good. Your recovery should be good. And of course, there's going to be hard sessions and hard weeks. So don't expect every week to be amazing.
Right.
But
we don't want to feel like trash 24/7, because when you start prepping, you're going to start feeling like crap.
When any time that you're in a calorie deficit and you're training, you're most likely going to feel it. Some people feel it more than others. Everybody has different dieting side effects, and for some people training gets hit really hard.
At least towards like the end.
Any time that you're at a different leverage, and if you did lose a lot of weight, you're just going to be at a completely different body composition. It's going to be harder. So one thing though, when you're ending this period, is that you know, training should be good, your recovery should be on point. And it doesn't mean that you don't ever feel sore, that you don't ever feel tired, but there is a difference of going in like, I have energy, I can get through my workout, I'm not super gassed.
You're not like falling asleep after training.
And if you're in a period like that and your food is good, then you need to look at the other external like life stressors and like how's your sleep.
Blood work too.
Blood work.
Yeah.
You know, so looking at your hormones, looking at your sleep, looking at your hydration and electrolytes, looking at how are you handling everything else in your life, what's your stress resiliency like. So those things will affect training heavily too. But food also certainly needs to be up there.
And then on further on the topic of training, I never recommend, you know, going into a contest prep or fat loss phase like with an injury. So just making sure that you're not injured so that you can enjoy training, because training is going to be a super important aspect of a fat loss phase to help you maintain your hard-earned muscle, you know, throughout the calorie deficit. So also a big one is like making sure that your body is healthy in training and that you're not nagging any injuries throughout. And say you're ready in all other aspects, but you are having a nagging injury, make sure you take care of that first before you start depleting your body of nutrients. Because then it's only going to get worse.
So fun. Love those. And this is a really, really important point. And it's, also you need to examine your relationship with food. And, where is that? How is that? Are you really rigid still? Are you flexible? Are you able to go and make substitutions? Are you able to go out and eat?
Yeah.
And really, your relationship, not just with food, but your relationship with yourself. And this is something that we really try and get across to clients is, are you dieting because you hate yourself and you hate your body, or because you want to make a change that's positive? And those two things are very, very different. You will never be happy if you make a change because you don't like something right now. That can be the catalyst for the change, right? And understandably, like, nobody's like, I want to go through all this hard work because I like everything about myself. No, of course there's going to be things where you're like, man, like I really want to improve this. And that's okay. But like a deep self-hatred, it's always going to be like unfulfilling at the end of it.
I think a big one is thinking that you're going to be happier if you're leaner. Like if that's the mindset you have about starting a diet or a fat loss phase, sorry to tell you, you're about to waste a lot of time, because you're going to be 20 pounds leaner, and if you're still not happier, it's likely that you still won't be happy, because how you look like on the outside shouldn't be the cause or reason for whether or not you're happy. So but yeah, to touch on the relationship with food one, this is a super important one for me, because this is one where I failed personally over and over again, which is why I've always had a hard time, when I was younger and after my first few shows, I always tried to start a diet when I really wasn't ready with my relationship with food. Like I kind of always pushed that to the side, and I never really addressed it. And I thought that, if I just started a prep, I would just like stick to it because I would commit to this date and getting on stage. But those deeper issues would always come up, and I was never able to like successfully finish a diet because I still had those relationship or issues with my relationship with food. On top of that, like a diet would never work because I was always trying to diet, and I was always like metabolically adapted to lower calories. So I think that sometimes like the catalyst for everything, like being successful in the long run, is your relationship with food. Do you
100%.
feel the need to binge still? If you feel the need to binge, I'll tell you right now, dieting is only going to make that feeling 100 times worse. And take it from me, that is not something you want to waste your time with.
And remember, there's a difference between consciously choosing to overeat versus binge eating. Right? It's the mindset around it. Like, don't ever be like, oh, well, I still want to like have a really big meal right now and go out. Like, no, very different. Then like, oh, I hope that nobody's going to be home and I'm going to buy these very particular things and I'm going to eat it this way.
I feel nervous around these specific foods because like, and I've been there, like feeling nervous around specific foods because I almost feel like I can't predict like how I'm going to act or what I'm going to do. And I feel like that's binge eating behavior, and something I struggled with for a while because I spent so much time before that constantly restricting. So
even stupid. Remember how it was like a week and a half ago we went to Trader Joe's and we got Jingle Jangle or whatever, right? Like it's like this tub of all like just really good,
the best,
just really good shit.
Finished mine already.
Like if you guys are looking for like a good snack,
highly recommend if you're not dieting.
Highly recommend it.
It's so good.
But normally that would have been something that I would have gotten, and I would have come home and I would have eaten a bunch of it, right? Maybe I wouldn't eat the whole thing, but I would eat a lot of it. And then I would either be like, oh, should I just throw this away? Or I'd be thinking about it constantly, like every time, like, oh, I'm just gonna go have some of that, right? And now it's like in the cabinet, and I have a little bit almost every day, and then I just kind of have a few pieces, and
or you forget it's even there.
Yeah,
like that's a big one for me. That I realized that, like,
this is normal.
Yeah, ice cream is something that like I used to have, and I remember thinking about it like literally all day, like from the moment I woke up. And now I have all of these things like jars of cookie butter, Jingle Jangle, and I forget that they're in there because I'm not food focused. And that's a big one. Like, are you still food focused? Because again, dieting is only going to make that 100 times worse, because I don't care how great your relationship with food is before. Once you start taking food away, it's natural to be a little bit more focused with food. But if you're starting a diet with food focus, it's only going to get so much worse.
Any habit, basically when you start a diet, is going to be the peak really the best you have of any kind of habit, right? Mm-hmm. You're not really going to get any better as you're dieting. You're just not. It's going to hopefully maintain as long as possible. It will kind of degenerate at some point, and that's normal, because you are literally taking, you know, when we're talking about a very extreme example, like a competition, you know, we're getting to these levels of body fats that are unnatural and unsustainable, and your body is like just trying to protect itself, like, wait, just give me food. So it's normal to feel food focused because your body wants it, you know what I mean? And so that's normal. But if you go into a diet already having those thoughts, be ready for hell when you get there, because it's going to happen inevitably. I don't care how great of a relationship you have with food before. Something's going to, you know, going to kind of give. And the people who are self-aware can understand that, and they go, okay, I see what's happening. I see why I'm feeling like this. And it's a normal kind of part of it. But you really want to, when you're ending a, you know, reverse or a surplus or a maintenance, whatever this kind of phase you're ending, it's really, really important to have a good handle with that and realize that, okay, what are the habits that I wanted to build up here? Because that is what I'm going to start my next deficit with.
Yeah, and I think when I was like younger and more naive, I always thought that a diet is going to fix me. Like, I'm just going to be more disciplined and I'm going to be fine. When in reality, like, for me, restricting more made things worse, and you really have to just build that discipline outside of a diet and then take it into like a competitive contest prep or wedding fat loss phase, blah, blah, blah.
And I think that it's such like a hard thing to distinguish, because there has to be something that makes you want to change, right? There has to be restriction. There has to be restraint. There has to be all these things when you're trying to make a change. And those aren't necessarily negative, but it's how you
perceive them, I think.
Display that restraint, and also why you're doing it. You know what I mean? If you're coming from this really kind of negative space, that is very different than like, you know what, like, I want to be, you know, more focused, you know, in better shape, feel better, have control over things. Like, I want to, you know, do this diet, do this deficit, you know, start training like this, do whatever it might be, right?
Or for some people, like, just having a goal to go after.
That's like, really exciting.
And we're all about that. Like, set goals for yourself. Like, have a trajectory to consistently work towards. For some people, that's bodybuilding. Great. For some people, that's something else that I can't think of, but, you know. Obviously.
So many good options.
Those are all my hobbies.
You're like other stuff. But no, I just think it's, don't get me drawing. But
I don't really have a life outside of this.
Drawing is like
a jiu-jitsu competition. Here we go.
Something like, you know, literally anything else. And I think that it is important to say that, because I don't want people to hear that and go, okay, well, I'm not going to change, or I'm not going to, and I kind of touched on this in the last podcast series with Rick, and it's such like an interesting time, I feel like, culturally and societal, like the message of, you know, accepting yourself, but then for many people that accept yourself just the way that you are creates this almost victim mentality of like, oh, well, I'm not going to change, like, even if I try, nothing's going to change, so I might as well just stay where I'm at. And it's like, no. You can still accept yourself, but want to make changes. And you can still actively, you know, push forward and have hard goals and do things that require discipline and require restraint. But it just depends on kind of where that is coming from and like the root of that. Like, if it's because you're self-conscious and you hate yourself, no. If it's because you want to better yourself and you want to, you know, challenge yourself, very different.
I think like naturally, not a lot of people will enjoy like complacency for too long anyway. Like, I feel like man will always continue to not create problems for themselves, but like just strive.
Literally, but if you don't put what I've seen,
you won't be happy. Like,
what I feel like is happening actually in society now is that because things are pretty good and, you know, it's really easy to be complacent, you then find issues in other things that maybe don't really matter.
I heard somewhere like some philosopher, I can't remember who, but basically said that man will never be able to live in a utopia because we'll just continue to create problems to solve, because that's essentially like in our nature. Like, we'll want to continue to strive.
So you're going to channel that to something that's good or something that's bad, right? And you see that people like latch on to certain things where it's like, all right, maybe if, you know, like you were trying to actively go do something for yourself that would make you better, we wouldn't kind of be in this situation. So I think that it's important that you do have goals, that you do strive, but that it's not your only
That's not making
thing.
it worse. Yeah, or your only thing.
I just think that it's a hard topic to discuss because it's so like dichotomous, but it really, really is the key.
Yeah. You guys get the point.
I think you guys got it. Hopefully.
We're making it more complicated, but
if not,
get the gist of what we're trying to say.
And then lastly, for when you're finishing this out, you know, having, you know, where is an appropriate body comp? And that's going to be very different for everybody. But, you know, okay, where is your body fat? Did you add the muscle that you wanted? What does your blood work look like?
For body fat also, because I feel like this still goes around a lot. I don't think that, and like, I don't know who's saying this, but I have girls that are like, you should never be more than 10 pounds over your stage weight.
Oh,
and,
dude, people still say this.
Yeah, and it's just like, just so everyone knows, that's not true. Like, some people should be 15, 20, 25, even 30 pounds over stage weight. It just really depends on like where their body is comfortable.
I've never understood that arbitrary value because, I mean, I coach clients of, well, I have a client who's 4'11" and a client who's 6'1".
Right. It's going to be very different.
What is 10 pounds, right? Like 10
yeah.
pounds on somebody who's 4'11" is very different than 10 pounds on somebody who's 6'1".
Yeah.
And so I understand the person who's saying, people who are perpetuating this, obviously, I think, understand that.
Yeah.
But just in general, that mindset, I've seen it play out really, really negatively with clients who are like, oh, my last coach told me I should only be at this weight for the top end of my off-season weight.
But you're still not getting a period, like...
Yeah, you're not getting a period. Your hunger is completely dysregulated.
Yeah.
You know, you're still very food-focused. You have a shit relationship with food. You still can't, you know, go out and be flexible.
Yeah.
You know, maybe your training is kind of iffy. So there's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration. So like that, you know, somebody's 10 pounds, it might be 12. Right? So it's like, okay, so, you know, say somebody was like, hey, I don't want you over 150 this off season. And then you're 152, but you feel really good. Is that wrong? Is that bad?
Right.
What if you're 148?
Really well. Yeah.
Right? Like, what if you were the opposite?
Hitting PRs in the gym.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's just completely different. And I think that it's just one of those other things that it's too simple. And I think that it just isn't appropriate. And as far as body fat percent, you know, everybody's like, oh, well, you know, how much should I weigh in the off season? Or like, what should my body fat be? Or this and that. And I'm like, listen, like, there is no one right answer.
Right.
It's like you said in the beginning, everybody always asks the question like, well, how long is this going to be?
Everyone wants like their specific answer, but unfortunately humans are highly variable.
Yes.
And really hard to control. And that's going to be very different.
And the responses across individuals are very different.
Yeah.
So, and even with like the same individual, the responses can be different between
season to season.
seasons.
Yeah.
And some people can, you know, eat a certain amount, stay in a certain body comp, and do all this stuff at one point in their life, and then they can't anymore. Yeah. Or they change, you know, and that's okay. You know, that's where coaching comes in. That's where it's not like, you know, hey, here's some numbers, hit them. No, we're actually seeing what's going on with somebody and making adjustments from that. Otherwise, we would just be, you know, a macro calculator, which that's fine, but that's not what coaching is.
Yeah, that can only take you so far.
So I think that it's important to kind of take all those things into context and what body fat percentage works for you, or what weight works for you, or which is what body comp in general is good for you, really will be determined by, you know, you and your genetics and everything else going on.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, obviously where blood work is useful too, to make sure that everything is kind of, you know, not totally out of whack. And, you know, you want to ideally start a diet in a position to where everything is pretty normal.
Yeah.
You know, for women, you know, having a consistent cycle, you know, just kind of feeling overall like pretty even keeled.
Yeah.
And again, there's huge variations within client to client, you know, context as well.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just really important to have all these things. And when we say optimal body comp, it doesn't mean one set type of body comp. Right. It means optimal for you and your goals.
Yeah, it's definitely a multivariate equation. Like, it's not just body composition. Like we talked about, relationship with food. Like, are you mentally ready to commit to a fat loss phase?
Mm-hmm. That's a huge aspect.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about more about that in the next episode. Mm-hmm. But, you know, like, you got to be ready to commit to that next step in that goal and the sacrifices necessary to get there.
Because like I said, it's not, oh, we just dropped 100 calories off. No, it's going to be an adjustment.
Not for everybody,
Like, you know, and that's why, like, once things get going, might be different. But especially getting started, you know, so where do we like to see clients finish off? All of these things that we've just discussed. You know, you spend enough time off, you've, you know, gotten to a body comp that is optimal for you as far as, you know, a certain amount of body fat, what muscle mass that you wanted to add, you know, your hormones are in a good spot, your training is good, your relationship with food is on point. And really when you're finishing this period, you know, you really have to kind of address why you're taking the next steps. You know, hey, I just want to, you know, I'm really happy with my body where it is, but I just want to change a little bit what it looks like. Or I want to strive towards this goal, or I want to try this or do that. Like, cool. That's really great, and that's exactly what we support for people.
And that's the scenario that is ideal for someone to finish a reverse or maintenance phase and start a fat loss phase. But 100%. If you are thinking that losing body fat is going to make you happier or it's going to improve your life, it's really not. And so that's definitely the wrong
obviously at some point it will.
Depending on how much body fat you have.
Depending on where your body composition is, that can be a huge
I'm talking
change.
about individuals who are relatively already kind of healthy, but obviously there are people who are dangerously overweight that need to lose body fat. And in that case, you are ready to lose body fat.
And that's what I was trying to talk about at the beginning. You know, when, you know, if somebody's in that spot, we're not like, hey, let's take 6 months to build your food up. No, we need to start making changes now. Doesn't
You're
mean
on the borderline of metabolic syndrome. Let's
we need to address it. So it's going to be very different for everybody. But if you guys have any other questions, of course, let us know. And I'm very excited that the new site is live. And I've been working on this for a few months. I'm so happy with it. I feel like it really gives a good representation of just us in general as a team and what we represent. So if you guys have any questions for us, or you want to read any articles we've written, check out the other podcast. You can go to teamlocofit.com, and you can also apply for coaching there as well. So thank you guys so much, and we will be back next time for getting ready and gearing up to start the diet.